70% of what you see is sound. One of my favorite filmmaking memes of all times is the skipping steps dude, where he films, slaps some zoom transitions, an orange and teal color grade, and calls it a banger for the gram. Putting polish and finishing touches on a piece is what being an editor is all about. And today we're going to talk about one of the most important ones, and that is sound design. Internet, welcome back. It's Robert Teegarden here again with another installment in my How to Edit for Beginner tutorial series. Today we're going to be talking about sound design and how to polish off your piece with the use of sound clips. Before I get started though, I'd love to ask, if you haven't already, please consider joining this community and subscribing. I put out content on a regular basis about filmmaking and the business of being a creative. So if you enjoy what you got going on here, hit subscribe and make sure you ring that bell for post notifications, because it really does help out this channel a ton. Now, being a musician coming into sound design, it's one of the most important aspects of my filmmaking career. A mediocre piece can really be polished off pretty well with just the appropriate use of sound design. And when I say 70% of what you see is sound, I really do mean that. You could be watching a piece and hear some screaming from off screen. You can also hear footsteps. You can hear a bunch of other stuff that's not happening on screen in front of you, but your brain puts together what's going on in the story just simply from the use of sound design. What I'd like to do is take a look at a piece that I've done just last week, and I'm gonna play it with no sound design at all, just the music, and we'll see exactly how that feels, and then I'm gonna add back the sound design as it was intended to be there in the first place. Let's take a look and see what it sounds like. So what I have here is a piece I put together a few weeks ago for a supplement company. It's a reds and greens powder, and so you see kind of all of the different things that would be inside that reds and greens powder, and you're substituting it with just a simple powder. So here's the piece with just music itself. So nothing terrible, but you can feel like something is actually missing. So I'm gonna unmute all of the different sound design pieces, and now let's rewatch it with those added in there. So much better. You can actually start to feel the things that are happening. There's water pouring, there's the powder pouring, you hear the ice in the glass spinning around. There's a subtle use of whooshes and kind of giving you some impact of the cup hitting the glass at the end. So you can see that there's definitely things that are going on. I'm gonna actually kill the music and show you how I used my old friend J&L cuts that I've talked about a ton. I've done a whole video on them and talked about them in our Essential Cuts video from this series, but I want you to see that even when the clip of the water is ended, you still hear the water going on. After that cup with the ice is there, you still hear ice clanking in the glass. It's leaving it hanging so that your brain has a chance to process what it just saw, and the sound helps put that cohesive story together. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna mute the actual song that's here, and let's just listen with the audio sound effects. And now you see here, it's actually, there's a ton of stuff that's going on, but what I wanted to show you for sure was this water pouring. So the water's over, right about here is where you stop seeing it, but it keeps going on. This is the water right here. It keeps going. Now, and conversely, what happens is that the pouring of the powder enters before you even see the powder. So what I'm doing is I'm cueing the viewer in terms of what's coming and what happened. I'm letting things hang out long so that they can process what's going on, and I'm cueing them by letting them hear things that are incoming into that particular scene. Now, another example is when the ice in the glass happens. You can still hear it afterwards. And so I'll use those J and L cuts to kind of cue the listener again in terms of what they've seen, and it really helps psychologically kind of glue those things together, okay? Now for this piece in the beginning, these two clips right here, I actually used my own at-source audio captures. So what I did here was I had a field recorder and a microphone, and I captured blueberries on this one here, and actually lemons dropping on the table as well to kind of accent exactly what was going on. Now when I do that, I use two different tools that are fairly cheap. I use a Zoom H1N, which is a kind of at-source smaller field recorder, and I've got a couple of these things, but I use them really because they're durable, they're really small and portable, and they're rugged. I can take them anywhere and not really worry about kind of damaging them. Now the other thing I use is a newer NW81 unidirectional condenser microphone. I did a video about this, and it's actually an unbelievable bargain. And I take that with me wherever I go for the same reasons. It's really rugged and durable, and I don't have to worry about damaging an $800 microphone when I'm in the field running, gunning, trying to get a bunch of at-source sounds. Now those two things in concert I use constantly to be able to capture the different sounds and pieces to really bolster up the things that I need. But I don't just capture stuff at source. I use a bunch of online resources too. Now, this isn't a sponsored post. These guys aren't giving me any money. I just am trying to show you guys what I use in order to create these things. The one that I use the most often is Pond 5, and Epidemic Sound has a couple as well. You can also just try Googling that particular sound and download or sound effect, and it'll come up with a bunch of different things that you can use in order to create the sound design that you want. Now, the thing I will say is that probably 60-70% of the time, the thing that I use to accent that piece is almost never what the sound is itself. Perfect example is when I was pouring that powder in this piece that I just showed you, that was the sound of sand hitting the ground. It wasn't powder itself. So just be aware that a lot of the times when you're picking pieces to use for sound design, that it's not going to be the thing itself, the exact thing that you're looking for. It's sometimes off the wall in terms of what actually is going to make that sound work. So just be creative and understand that that's what's going on. Now, the other thing I wanted to do is show you a piece that has no music at all. It's just completely sound design, totally different mood, but it has a different palette in terms of the way in which it works. So let's take a look at this other piece I did. So what I got here, this is an actual machined product that a client put together. And this lighting technique and the mood that is set is something that's completely different. Like I said, there's no music here. So let's take a listen to what this actually is and get a feel for what I've done here. So short piece, but there's a bunch of things that I want to call out and discuss in terms of what's going on in this particular thing. Now, whooshes and impact hits are really what make this piece work. The impact hits are kind of when the things come in, when the clips come in, and the whooshes are the transitional pieces that kind of stitch these things together. Let's take another look. So you get that initial impact and then that kind of cyborgy transition that's on the light leak here. And there's another one for the last individual hit. You'll get both. You'll get a whoosh in the transition and then a hit, an impact hit at the end. One more time. So those two things, the whoosh and the impact hits, are really what sell this particular piece. But there's also something else that's going on here. I'm gonna solo this track right here, and you're gonna be able to hear that this is an undertone or an accent. So all that is really just kind of an ambient bed that sits underneath all of the individual sounds, and it acts as like a binder, almost the glue that keeps this whole thing together. If we take that piece out, you still hear all the sound design, but there's something missing. There's not like this cohesive flow in between the two. Here, have a listen. So that's without it, and you can tell there's like a gap in between. The things don't flow as well together as they could have if I had this kind of binder in there. So let's take another listen with it in there. Now, the last little thing that I would use that's a little above this tutorial is EQ and panning things. And the reason I would do that is because it actually puts them in a very physical location within my piece itself. The panning actually puts it where it's going to be from a left and right point of view, and the EQ puts it in its own sonic space. Now, like I said, this is a little bit over the scope of what this tutorial is, but that's kind of the finishing polish that you would use from a sound design perspective, is actually putting things in its own sonic space itself. So with all this said, where do you start? Well, really the goal of sound design is to create an immersive auditory experience for the viewer and place them exactly where you want them to be contextually. So when you're doing things like this, think at exactly where are you? If you're in a city, then you should be using city soundscapes, right? Cars driving, people chattering, maybe there's some construction in the background. If there's water involved, if there's birds flying. So just really think, like, what is the element that's going on here that really would drive this particular piece home? If someone's skateboarding, put a skateboard sound on. If they're riding a bike, if kids are playing on the playground, use those elements as cues to really drive home and polish your piece off with sound design. Now, with that being said, again, what I would love for you guys to do is be able to check out the rest of the videos that I have here on this particular tutorial series. I'm going to link that playlist at the end of this video. And if you like this video, please like the damn video. And if you found this one useful, I would love it if you would share it with somebody else that may also find this thing useful. And like I said in the beginning, if you would love to join our community and figure out exactly what's going on here on a weekly basis with these uploads on filmmaking and the business of being creative, then hit that subscribe button and make sure you ring that bell for post notifications so we can get these videos out to more people faster. With that being said, this is Robert Teegarden with another one in the can. I'll see you guys next week. Peace.